Welcome, everybody. Any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. Topic is all on automating flows and all the different ways that we can use our Jira automation. So before we dive into this any deeper, though, we're going to do some introductions. First, I will start off with introducing myself. I have been using Atlassian products since 2015. I am located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So for the locals, hi, nice to see you guys. And I have been part of the Atlassian community for our chapter here since 2021. So I work generally in project program management as well as Atlassian administration. We also have some other members on it that are helping moderate today as well. We've got Krumo, Erica, David, and Andre can give a little wave so everybody can see you guys. They are going to be helping me running the show today. They are also community leaders in their respective cities, as you can see. Big shout out to them. To get into this first off, we're going to start off with what is Jira automation. And in that regard there, Jira Automation is a no-code rule builder that will allow users to build out basically if this, then that rules around Jira events. This feature was designed to help administrators, both in Jira and Confluence, automate some of their processes and keep their instances up to date. It has been used as a tool to help also end users save time on their own processes and shed some waste around doing a lot of manual clicking. Automation rules need to be created by project administrators for a single project rule or global Jira administrators for multi-project and global rules in order for them to be used by end users. Now, while originally it was available as an add-on through the Atlassian Marketplace back in the day, it's now available as a default option in all of the Jira Cloud setups. Now, I will put a caveat on this that for Confluence administration, it is available in Confluence Premium, not Confluence Standard. But back onto the Jira side, to keep it in mind, however, there are limitations based off of the plan that your organization has. So some of the limits will be the kinds of rules that your company can create. If you have free or standard Jira, the organization will be limited to creating single project rules, which you can work around. But if you do have requirements for global and multi-project rules, that's where you're going to need Jira Premium software or service management or work management once they start charging for that. Now, there is a link for the data center version of this. I do have that link there and I can share it. Thing we're going to go into about creating some basic automation rules is how to navigate to the section. For navigation to access the automation feature inside Jira, the project admin or the Jira administrator would need to navigate inside the project settings where the automation section is located. Once they're there, they'll need to click on Create Rule, which is in the top right corner of the main screen that I have circled here. Once they're in there, they can go ahead and select a trigger, one of the many triggers, I should say, that are available based off of the rule you're creating. Some of the triggers won't require any additional configuration, but some of them will. And you can select triggers based off of issue changes and values, repo branches, integrations, scheduled triggers. There are also some service management triggers, and these ones are great if you've got approval workflows. They're actually very helpful there. There's release management type triggers, and there's also manual triggers. One of the things, the majority of the triggers that users will request automation rules around are usually issue type triggers. When a ticket is created, transitioned, resolved, those would all fall into that category. However, with some exploration and some deeper dives, a developer that also has Jira admin and project admin permissions can really get creative in how some of these triggers and these automations are used. I mean, trust me, I'm sure some of these guys here can definitely tell you with their more advanced knowledge on automation. Once your trigger is selected and configured, if it's required, then you can go ahead and hit save. And then next step, you get to add all your statements. These are your actions, your if statements. There are 3 types of actions that can be performed after the trigger is configured. The 3 components are referred to as branches, actions, and conditions. Most of the common use cases were only going to scratch the surface on what you could do for manipulating on these components. Most of the time, you'll find that that's a good enough approach. However, if you really want to unlock some of the abilities of the automation tool itself, then it's definitely advised to get a sandbox or a free environment and really go to town with trialing the limits of what the software can do for yourselves. So for components that are branches, when you enter into branches, there are typically 2 options underneath. Advanced branching, which allows for smart variables and values, and branch rules and related issues, which are more simpler for branch implementations. Branch rules and related issues allows the administrators to select the kinds of issues within a set of projects where the branch actions are going to be performed against that group of issues. I do have an article I can also share with you guys that goes into more detail about how I had to recently utilize that branch rule functionality to solve a use case with automation. The other component type is actions. So actions are the actual changes to the system and the tickets. There are several actions in this section. We're not going to do a full deep dive into this area, but this is where you're going to find the things like updating a ticket, creating a pull request, changing the request type, assigning the ticket, creating a web request, basically the whole 9 yards in the kitchen sink. We also have conditions. Now, conditions are, to put it simply put, they're your if statements. So if you're a developer, you would probably know very well what an if statement is for coding. If you've worked with Excel or Google Docs, you'll understand if statements in that context of spreadsheets and populating values that way. But really, your conditions are your if statements. If you select a condition, it checks your ticket against the criteria that you're requesting it to check against. And then if it's successful, it will run the action components that are underneath it or underneath the branch of that condition. Really, one of the things I want to call out is to remember that there is no limit in this section on what you can and can't do here, except for your own limitations and your own imagination. There is also a library of pre-configured rules that can be used as a starting point on their own to meet your needs. We do have a link to that library, and we can share that with you, but feel free to explore the library to see what others have also done. The Atlassian community also has resources in their automation group that is available to people that want to create rules that are not found in this library. So please reach out there as well, or you can reach out to any of us if there's any help you need with your own rules. Be more than happy to help. When you're happy with your rule, you have to be sure to add in rule details so that other administrators will understand what your rule does. As you can see on the screen here, you can add in things like a description, the name, if you want to allow the trigger, who the owner is, how it acts. So be sure to fill this in and click save, as well as also make sure you turn the rule on. The first time you click save, it will enable the rule, but you can also toggle it on and off in the list view of all of your rules for the project. Once you're familiar with how to create the automation rules within Jira, then you can start working really on some more advanced tricks. For example, if you're skilled with scripting and repositories, you can create variables, which can also then be used in other actions of the same automation rule. You can also have rules trigger other automation rules as well. These are just some of the advanced things that we can do. Administrators have been known to also send emails and messages out to users using automation rules, and they customize them with smart values and other scripting tools within the Jira API. You can also send customized messages out through Teams and Slack using Teams and Slack's Markdown and APIs as well. And then also automations have been used to modify repositories. So you can sync your automations between GitHub, Bitbucket, LaunchDarkly, and they have other actions that are available if your systems are integrated together. Again, I'll admit these like definitely more skill than I have. And you've got some skill. Administrators can do some really advanced tricks between the different tool integrations with Jira automation. Another advanced trick that I have seen people use for automation and for creating them is the regex. The Jira automation rules actually do work with regex, and they can be used with variables and smart values. Again, if you have the skill set, if you understand a lot of the coding, the developing, how regex works, you can definitely spend some time investigating into all these deeper canyons of automation that are available. You can also, for the super adventurous here, combine all of these tricks and all these advanced features into a single automation. Myself personally, while I'm that adventurous, I may do more damage. This is what testing environments are for. But you can also use Atlassian's REST API to build your own automations in even another tool like Zapier. So some of the common uses of automation are really pretty simplistic. The majority of use cases that automation rules tend to be used for in most environments is providing assistance with synchronizing tickets across different projects, work streams. And for example, if a pull request is created, then a ticket would be transitioned into a new status. Another example would be creating new tickets based off of a comment in a parent ticket or resolving a trigger ticket. They'll also tend to auto-resolve tickets as well, like subtasks and parent tickets and epics, when all of the related work and issues are completed. Rules are typically used for auto-assigning as well, based on a set of conditions. For example, they can be used to, if you're working in a very specific region and you're sharing a project on a global scale with people from several regions, it can be decided that for all tickets in your region would be assigned to you. For all tickets assigned in this region would be assigned to a different person. That's an example there. They can also help with moving approval workflows along by sending emails, doing auto assignments, forms, and ticket creations. Rules are commonly used to schedule some routine tasks that involve Jira tickets, as well as creating and sending information over to Confluence pages. Again, these are just some common examples and some common use cases. There are several use cases out there that people use that aren't listed here. This here is actually an example. I do apologize. This might be a little small in the font. This is actually a real life example of a complex automation I have built myself for one of my clients. And they actually are using this daily. Basically, what this automation is for is to help create and transition related front-end tickets based on the status of the parent designer story. It also sends out alerts to the stakeholders that work is progressing. So the Jira design project here is creating many pieces of a design system that need to be built out by all of the platforms that use the system down the road. Personally, I did not want to be the person creating and updating all these tickets, because every time a single designer had finished a piece of the puzzle, all this work had to get done. And being the project manager on their group, I was actually, as I said, I was responsible for doing that. So this is why I built this. There are 6 platforms that were required to do the implementation work. And really what it was is that they all wanted their tickets created different ways. What I did was I broke the automation down into 3 different phases. the ticket creation phase, the ticket updating phase, and the communication in Slack phase. So in this first phase here, the trigger action is where the story ticket for the platform projects, when the designers put it into an in review status, they were instantly hit with all of these different if statements. And this is where the conditions component came into place. So really what we were checking for here is for the CTV types, the web type platforms or the mobile type platforms. And we also wanted to make sure that if none of these if statements sent a true response for any subtasks, so we had to filter those out. The other thing is we only want projects from or tickets from the design project, not from all the platform projects that this rule will create tickets on later. That's why the filter is applied here. If the story matches one of these three components, then if statement components, then the tickets were created in their respective branches. Once all of the tickets were created, we ran into our next phase, which is updating the statuses of all the linked issues in the trigger issue. The first thing is that we ran an if statement to locate all the story tickets that were impacted by the rule. Small spoiler is it's the trigger ticket, and this was just really a way to look up that was a trigger ticket. We also then have to look at the linked issues that were inside the trigger story and find the tickets that were linked with the split to link type. Now, remember, in this example, in real life, the tickets would be linked with all kinds of junk. So we also just wanted to pull out the ones we cared about to make this work. So we had to train everybody to link it specifically with the right linking model. Once we go through here, then we submit a branch to transition each of them into the to-do status. This transition, both the tickets we created in phase one and as well as all the tvOS and smart TV tickets that already existed with the issue linking. Just for context, those two platforms, they wanted their tickets created well at the beginning of when the design story ticket was created, not at this stage. Now that we've got them all linked, we've got them all updated to the correct status, we can move on to the last phase of the automation, which is all of our communications. In this phase, what we did was we kicked this off by buying Jira some time to actually catch up with what we've done so far using the refetch issue data step. Now, I did this twice because of the fact that Jira actually needed some additional time to process everything we had done, which is why it's great to use it as a way to pause between different components within your automation. Now, once we were done that, we asked the automation to do a lookup of all of our newly created tickets by looking at the epic links where the front end tickets were added. Now, this was because all the tickets must be part of an epic for this client's particular larger initiative. I also asked that I took a look for the issue linking that ties these tickets back to the trigger issue. Once it completed the search results, the automation then compared the number of results. If that number was greater than 0, then it continued on to send a lovely Slack message. From here, you can't see the entire step config, but basically, I asked it to post a custom message in a dedicated channel that they use for notifying all updated tickets with the trigger issue, basically saying that this is done, it's ready to go, all the formatting's there, and the stakeholders can come and see that the tickets were ready to go ahead. This one did take quite a bit of time to figure out, but this is really just an example of a more complex one using the different elements that would be there. But just quickly to reiterate, the refetch issue data was used twice, one after another, because when I tested the rule with just one refetch, it was not enough time to allow for all the transitions to take place, all of the linking to take place, and all of the other modifications that the automation rule had done up to that point. And I found that the second refresh just helped buy a little bit extra time in this specific automation rule in order to prep it so that the JQL lookup issue action would actually execute properly and was able to successfully pull all of the tickets that were created so that it would send out the Slack message. I will also point out I used it too because it was the best knowledge I had at that time for how to do that function. I could probably go back now with what I've learned from automation and rebuild that exact automation a little more efficiently. I also have another example use case scenario here as well. Definitely a much simpler one than the one I had done. The first use case that I wanted to explore was going around managing the procurements. It really didn't matter if you're a 5-person or 5,000-person shop. Procurement is going to come up at some point and it's either going to have to follow a manual process to buy some supplies. So the goal here was to dig into more of a standardized procurement procedure for finance, operations, marketing, and some other teams that they can select their provider and vendor for those needs. This one's not developer focused, but it's still a general use case that can be solved with Jira automation, as well as some creative problem solving by an admin. It's also a use case that demonstrated what Jira itself had expanded into being used for other areas of business. To get started on this, in order to configure the Jira environment to handle procurements, there were a few items that will be required to start. You can call them ingredients, requirements, whatever you'd like. The first thing you're going to need is a work management project, or for some of the oldies in the room here, they used to be Jira Core on server and data center. I'm not sure exactly what version they changed the name to on data center, but it did used to be called Core. Work management comes with its own set of templates and that will have some items and some configurations ready to go out of the box. So we're not going to reinvent a wheel here when it comes to doing this new process. Your users are already going to have to learn how to do this as it is. Within work management, we're going to start by using the RFP template that they have as part of the project configuration. It's going to give us the baseline of what we need to modify later on. At this stage, knowing that the project will have 2 issue types, a task and a subtask, and a pre-configured workflow is going to be more than good enough. You're also going to need a marketplace app called Issue Checklist for Jira. It's by Hero Coders. And again, this is specifically for this use case. This plugin, though, will turn on the ability to have checklists within the Jira tickets. And then what this does is it also creates templates that you can use across your site. One of the neat little things about this app, which we'll get into a bit more, is the ability to add validators into the workflow so that teammates can't transition tickets until all the items on your checklist are done. The setup for this use case will involve modifying the workflow to make it work right for the team, creating the form, configuring the checklist, and configuring the actual automation rule. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all the setup tasks in detail because our focus here is the automation piece that binds it together. However, if you are interested in going through this in more detail, we can go through this afterwards in finer detail of how to configure it. So the first thing we got to do is our project creation. We would navigate over to the list of all of our projects, and we can create the lovely create project button up here in the top right corner. We would also then go into our select under finance section here, and then locate our RFP process template. Once we can give it a quick fancy little name and update all the project details, we're just going to call procure, give it the key procure, call procurement, and go ahead and click create. This was the original workflow that Jira gave us when we create the project using the RFP process template. Now, while this works for a manual process, it's not going to work with our automation nicely. So we will need to modify this. In this use case, we're going to have to modify the proposal sent status and completely redo all of these different transitions. The any-to-any transition model, again, it can break our automations. Also, if that's not enough, I don't know about you guys, but most finance teams I deal with have more linear workflows and processes. So this workflow is not going to work for them. After we spend some time updating the workflow, this is what we're going to have to work with. We've removed all of the any-to-any transitions that have ever existed here and created a lovely linear one that makes more sense for our users. And for those of you that are not aware, transitions are the name on the server version. The transitions were the names of the buttons when you press them within Jira to move the ticket from one status to the next. In cloud, if you click the drop down of where your status is, it will say the name of the transition, and then it'll give you an arrow and then say what the status is that it's going to transition to. So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, some of the other Jira administrators, and you guys can also decide how important that is to have different transition labels. Now that the workflow is complete, though, we can move along to creating the form for the procurement team. And for sheer simplicity's sake and timing for the presentation, we're going to just give an example here of what this could look like. There is an example of a procurement form you can modify if you want to actually try this, but this is just an example. Now, for the actual checklist setup, to ensure that only proposals that would meet the minimum requirements are considered, you need to give the procurement team a checklist. We're also going to ensure that our checklist is set as a default template for all the subtasks in the project. For this use case, we'll be managing multiple procurements simultaneously, so templates can be added to subtasks manually. To create the checklist, we're going to need to ensure that the app is installed. So issue checklist for Jira. We're going to select the checklist from the left navigation bar, click create template and give it a name. For this demo, we'll just name it copy machine requirements and add our requirements to the list. Once we're done, we'll save it and we can add the checklist as a default for all of our subtasks. Now, the part you guys have been waiting for, the automation time. Done all this groundwork already, and now we can start on the main goal, which is creating the automations. Now, these automations, keep in mind, are simpler in nature because the goal here is helping the company manage procurement. Let's go ahead and get started. The first automation is we're going to figure is the one that triggers every single time an issue is transitioned. When the ticket is transitioned, the automation will edit the ticket that is being added, transitioning by adding the label. The first thing that's going to happen when you create the rule is the issue trigger. We have it configured to fire anytime a ticket in the procurement project here moves through the workflow. When it goes from response received to decided, this will start firing. The next component that happens is it will edit the ticket to add the declined label. From there, we will be asked to either add additional components or name the automation and turn it on. We're just going to name it declined RFPs and turn it on. The next automation here, again, super simple, but can be quite powerful. We have the blessing this time that this one already exists in Jira's library. So instead of opening up the automation settings and going through all that, this is a screenshot that's going to show you how to navigate, how to find it and navigate to it. So here you can see that when we get to the first tab, there are several automations to pick from. So feel free to browse and test these out in your sandbox. We're going to use this one right here. When all subtabs are done, move parent to done. We're going to just click on we're going to select it and click on create rule. That's it, easy peasy. Now that we have the automation, we are going to go ahead and name it. We can skip all the configuration steps because as you can see here, the rule's already done for us. We can spend a minute here explaining this. Basically, so that's the turning it on part. And then basically when we transition to done here, that is the trigger in green. We also have the branch showing in purple. So for all the parents, for the parent issue, we are going to do a bunch of steps. And then based on the conditions here, if the subtask match done, and if the status of the parent ticket is not done, then what's not shown here, which is the final step, is if all of this is true, then the parent issue itself would be transitioned to done as an action step, and it would be shown in blue. To quickly bring it all together, we're going to take a quick peek at the overall life of this process. So first off, we start with making the ticket. To do this, the users are going to fill in this form that we made earlier. And the issue will start in the RFP selection creation process. From there, they'll approve the budget, they'll transition it through their flow. It will go into preparing, they draft up their RFP. When they make it public and the due date is passed, they set the due date and it will transition to issued. This lets them know that they're expecting responses. When the due date passes, the person assigned to this are going to put into response received, and then they'll create the subtask for the proposals that they actually get back. Now, this is where the checklist that we built earlier is going to come in. Each subtask is going to have that checklist put onto the proposals. And then one of two things are going to start happening here. If all of the requirements are met, it will transition the subtask to evaluating. However, if they're not met, then it's going to start transitioning the subtask to decided. Now, that automation we created, if we transition the ticket from response received to decided, it's going to update and add the declined label to the ticket. In this case, it'll be the subtask that will get that update. And then from here, all we have left are all the different subtasks that are open in evaluating response. Oh, my apologies, I've response received. And when they get into the evaluating status there, the procurement team is going to have to actually make some decisions and do their own deep dive on them. So they'll either label them themselves as declined or selected. And then let's not forget that they will transition one of these, the winners will get transitioned over to decided as well. When the final subtask here, it closes, then the other automation here will kick in and the original ticket will transition to its decided status as well. I do want to thank you guys for joining me on this. I do see we have several questions here. More than happy to start opening up the floor for questions. And I hope you guys have enjoyed the presentation. And again, I want to thank my group here for helping with the chat and providing all the links and all the other awesome stuff you guys have done. I apologize. My cat has decided that she's going to start walking in front of the screen.
Hey, I have a quick question. Ryan here from Toronto. Are there automations available after you do a project creation, like assigning tickets to people and stuff like that?
Yes, as soon as the Jira project is created, it is available. There are settings in the project settings that are available for creating automations right away. So
Perfect.
what it is typically once the project's created and you go into those project settings, there's a little section called automations. Once you click on there, you'll have full access.
Thank you.
No problem.
One thing I want to share, in case people weren't aware, is there is one of my favorite new actions in Cloud is the ability to create a sprint. So if you are an agile company and you are running sprints in Scrum, there's now the ability to have basically an action of creating a sprint. So, hey, every 2 weeks, create that new sprint automatically in your backlog, which is super awesome. So just wanted to make sure people were aware of that new feature in the Cloud.
How would you recommend to start testing, trying out Jira automations? Like, would be foolproof? Because I've never done it. I would definitely destroy something.
I know I have definitely had a couple of mishaps perhaps myself, even in production environments, I would recommend if you have available to you using a sandbox. So if you're on enterprise or a premium plan, there is a sandbox that could be made available to you by your Jira administrators or org administrators. If that's not an option, you can always create a free or standard trial of Jira and use that as an option for playing around as well. And I know myself personally, that's the route I have taken.
Thanks. It definitely helps playing around before bringing it on to production.
Do we have any other questions? A more comprehensive resource on smart values and the use of the mustache tool, as well as JSON fits into it all. That is a very good question. We will, unless David, you happen to have a resource offhand. You do have one. There you go. David has just shared in the chat for you, Dan, a resource as well for the smart values for issues. What I find I need to do to insert smart values into JSON, I've had to do is actually use the create variable action component. And then I've inserted the variable that I created from there into the JSON. And I did that with web requests. Somebody with probably much more experience than I have in automations and development might have a better recommendation, but that was the approach I've tried for that. I hope that answers your question there as well, Dan.
From all the questions, there was one. I wasn't sure if we could help Mary. She's been working with some complex rules and was wondering if there's any way to check for or versus the implied and when checking multiple conditions. Currently, she has to use multiple if-else statements.
There would actually be a way of checking into that. There is, just taking a quick peek here. One of the if conditions, I believe there is an if condition I know of that has the ability to check against different ors with inside the if condition. I'm just trying to remember quickly off the top of my head which one that specifically is. Quickly pulling it up within an environment at the moment to get the exact name for you if you bear with me for one moment. I've been using the if or else if condition for that. So when you use the if or else, what it does is you can run the actions if all the conditions match or if at least one condition matches. And then you can use your conditions as or statements. That would be the best one that I can propose for that.
It's definitely a topic we should incorporate another session throughout the year.
Absolutely, yes. We can definitely do another session for this. So I think this would be great to expand upon, hear how other people have used automations. Well, that is a good question that came in. How can we use output of one filter as input to another? For that there, you would need to use the branching. For each add a branch, and then you can use the branch rule related issues, and then you can do JQL and enter in your JQL there, and then you can run actions against the results of that JQL filter.
And Susan expressed she would like to have a session on automation on assets because they work totally different.
I am definitely sure we could probably arrange that.
I see. 2024 is full of opportunities.
It absolutely is. Yes. One of the contact channels for you guys that if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at winnipeg@atlassiancommunity.com. And we're also all on the Atlassian community of the forums there. If you've got questions, that will open you up to the entire community for answers. So you can definitely get a lot of input there. I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank my partners today for helping moderate and handle the chat. You guys have been excellent. Can't thank you enough. So thank you very much for coming.